I think that I've always had the mindset of you fail your way to success. And so for me, a failure looks more like a learning experience,
Yeah.
learning opportunity. And to be honest, we haven't done a lot of flips since then. It was more like buy and hold. And I go back and I wish we'd kept that one. We bought that house for about $50,000, and I know it's probably worth $450,000 now. I wish I'd held on to it. And we just got great guidance. We're blessed to have been in Gary Keller's orbit. He's a self-made billionaire, and I got all of that like trickled down from Jay. Jay would come home from work and kind of share his wisdom from Gary. And at one point, we decided that we were going to set a goal to become millionaires.
So, Wendy Papasan, host of Empire Building, thank you so much for joining me on Podcast Junkies.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me today, Harry.
What a pleasure it was to meet you, and shout out to our mutual friend Christina Wise for bringing such a unique group of fine human beings together. It's a testament, I think, to her energy. And so we met at her event in Park City. Now going back to, was it October?
Yeah, it was October. It took us a hot minute to get together, but
Yeah,
yeah, it was a very special event. A nicely curated group of really interesting people, and
absolutely.
I just remember having great conversations. And one of my great conversations was with you.
Yes.
So thanks for reconnecting, and I'm happy for us to stay connected.
Yeah, I'm always grateful to have the podcast as a platform to invite people on. And that's really the
Yeah,
reason why I started it. And the only really prerequisite is that you've have a podcast or in the
yeah, yeah,
podcasting space,
yeah. I
which
love
is a lot of people nowadays.
Yeah, well, I love that, and it's so interesting because then you get to learn a lot about a lot of
Yes.
different things. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because typically most of the people have the show as one aspect of their business or their life, and then we start branching out into other things. And it's helped me become a better listener, conversationalist. Between my two shows, I'm over 500 interviews, so it's
Wow,
been a
wow,
fantastic journey.
yeah.
And I started this show in 2014.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. Can you believe that even?
No, no, sometimes it's like I remember the first day I went to a conference called New Media Expo in Las Vegas, and it
Mhm.
was bloggers, podcasters, and YouTubers, and so that sort of
Okay.
dates
Yeah.
the
Wow.
event
Wow. Back in the day.
back
Yeah.
in it.
You're OG.
And I thought it was late too, so it's
Yeah.
funny.
I actually started, my husband and I had a podcast probably about 2016.
Yeah.
It was called Inside ATX, and we
Hmm.
interviewed interesting people in Austin. And, I sort of regret not keeping up with that.
Yeah.
It just ended up being a lot of work because we were doing so much of the work ourselves. Of course, now it's so easy to
Yeah.
outsource and get help
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
edit and all that kind of stuff. But in 2016, it was editing by, printing out manuscripts and trying to do it manually. And it was just a lot of work. So ultimately we let it go. But man, I wish I'd kept that one up since 2016.
I was looking for some of the shows, and I saw that Inside ATX is still on like it's a live feed. If there's a site called Listen Notes where you can put in podcasts, and it does come up, so I think people can still find it.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's good. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that.
Yeah. So a little bit on your background. You've built businesses, invested in real estate, and host Empire Building, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
When did you first realize that you were wired to build?
Well, that's really interesting. I actually had my very first business aside from babysitting, but I was a junior in high school,
Okay.
and me and my best friend, and she went on to become a doctor. She's
Yeah.
a OBGYN near you in Minnesota,
Okay.
actually. And so we had a little earring business, and we ended up selling it in three stores in our little hometown in
Okay.
northern Minnesota. And yeah, that was kind of, we got a checking account, we had a name, and we, made some money from it. And that was kind of my first entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That must be a good feeling as an entrepreneur. That first sale or getting, the earrings selected to be in a store. Like it's that moment when you realize, okay, maybe there's something here, and you never forget that first feeling.
Yeah. And I think that what's interesting is I had no role models for being an
Mm.
entrepreneur in my life.
Okay.
Both of my parents were kind of working class, and, my whole family was. I come from a long line of farmers. And so I really had no, which is very entrepreneurial actually when you think about it,
Yeah.
but I just had no reference for it. So if I had, I may have pursued it more, but I didn't really start my big business, my real estate business, until I was 38.
Okay.
So it was a pretty big gap between the two.
You mentioned the farming, so I couldn't resist asking about it because I don't know if I mentioned it when we spoke. I have a second show called the Vertical Farming Podcast, which was
Oh yeah.
interesting to me because I was interested in the topic, and I've interviewed CEOs, about 180 CEOs and founders, and it's turned. I've had to actually spin it off into like a little. So it's another business as well because it's a media company related to the ag tech space. But I have had conversations with people who have a family history in farming, and I think what's been interesting as I have those conversations with those people, I always notice the trend that if you've got a farming background or you grew up on a farm, there's a work ethic that is instilled in you that's so
Yes.
crazy and it's
Yeah.
prevalent and it's really interesting that aspect of it. So I don't know how much into farming the family was.
I didn't grow up on a farm, but
Yeah.
like my whole extended family are farmers.
Okay.
And, my grandmother, who I was very close to, she was 14 and her dad died. And
Okay.
she had, nine brothers and sisters
Yeah.
at 14.
Wow.
And she and my great grandmother, who is also an amazing woman, they worked the farm together. So I
Wow.
had lots of stories around that. And they were both so hardworking. My great grandmother lived to be 100. She shoveled her own walk until she was well into her 90s. And that's no joke in Minnesota.
Yeah, for sure.
And so just this idea of, yeah, you just get up and do what needs to be done until it's finished.
Yeah.
And that's definitely the work ethic that was installed in me.
I grew up in New York and lived in New York City, and then I lived in LA, and now I'm in Minnesota, and I have chickens. And so it's been
Yeah.
a really interesting journey. So I'm not like a proper farmer, but there were a couple
Yeah.
of, there's some times in the, especially last week when it was like minus 20, like I had to get up early, and on top of everything else that I want to do, my meditation, my workout, I'm like, I got to check on the chickens. I got to check that the
Yeah.
water's not frozen. I got to make sure there's eggs, that there's no eggs there so they don't freeze. And the first couple of times I was like, my God, this is like a lot of things to be thinking
Yeah.
of. But you get into this rhythm, I guess, for lack of
Yeah.
a better term.
Yeah. You just do it.
Yeah, you just,
Well, but it's also the cold, I think, makes people really tough up
yeah,
there in
yeah,
that part of the world. I
yeah.
mean, I live in Austin, Texas now, and I have two native Austinites. My sons are 20 and 21, and they're wimpy, when it comes to the weather. My
For
husband's
sure.
from Memphis. They're all wimpy. So I am strong when it
Yeah.
comes to the weather. I'm
I
tough.
realized that too because I had it in New York, and then when I went to LA, I was there for 4 years. And all you need is a hoodie and your trunk, and you're
Oh
good.
yeah, LA spoils people, and people who try to move from LA or Northern California or San Diego or something
Yeah.
like that. They're just messed up. They can't leave. They
N-
like don't even try
No.
because they come to Austin. They're like, it's too hot. They go anywhere else, it's too cold,
Yeah.
which it is
Yeah.
compared to where they grew up. So I feel for them. They're stuck.
You do get acclimated though, I think, as you were referencing, because now like I'll go outside and like throw out the trash in a t-shirt, and then I
Yeah,
look at the temperature and I'm like, oh, it's like 30 degrees out, but it doesn't phase me anymore.
yeah, you're fine. Your body does adjust. I think that is true. Like I read somewhere in Finland,
Yeah,
they bundle up the babies and they put them
I've
outside
seen
in
that.
the winter.
I've seen
Yeah,
that.
just to
It's
get
so
them like
smart.
acclimated. So I think it must do something to your at the cellular level.
Yeah.
I certainly remember in high school. In high school, of course, you do all kinds of dumb fashion stuff. But yeah, just wearing like my jelly shoes in the middle of winter with like maybe a sweater, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So
So after your success with the earring business and prior to getting into real estate, what's the short version of like where your career took you?
yeah. Well, when I graduated from college, I actually traveled around the world for 18 months.
Nice.
I had multiple jobs. I had a 6-month visa to work in the UK, and I had several jobs there,
Yeah.
including one on the Golden Hind, which was Sir Francis Drake's ship that sailed around the world. So it was like a full size replica of it.
Yeah.
And it sailed around the UK. So I was actually a sailor and I would give tours to school children. So that was
Wow.
like a fun job. And I saved up some money and then I backpacked around the world. I went all through the Middle East. I traveled all over Europe. I actually hitchhiked across Canada,
Yeah.
which was crazy. And yeah, then landed back in northern Minnesota and it felt really small.
Yeah.
So then I hopped on a Greyhound bus and I went to New York to,
Wow.
see if I could make it, find my destiny in New York City. So I worked for about 4 years in New York City as a public relations consultant.
Okay.
And it's kind of where I got my cold calling
Yeah.
acumen. I would cold call newspapers and then I would go fax my,
Remember
you know,
faxes? Yep.
do my fax, calling and faxing way in the 90s.
Yeah.
And then I met my husband and we got married and then we traveled around the world together for 4 months. We had a
Yeah.
really great long honeymoon, and then we landed in Austin, Texas.
Nice.
And yeah, I had some jobs in the travel industry, and then I took 5 years off to be a stay-at-home mom
Okay.
and then invest in real estate. That's when I got started in investing. And then in 2009, when my oldest son was getting ready to go to kindergarten, I
Hmm.
got my real estate license. So
Nice.
yeah, I've been doing that for 17 years, which is crazy.
That's a fantastic
Yeah.
story. Thanks for sharing
Yeah.
that. What is it about real estate that attracted you?
Well, I actually got into it because my husband worked at the corporate office of
Hmm.
Keller Williams.
Okay.
And so he and Gary have been business partners
Yeah.
for 25 years and written many best-selling books together. And so he wrote a book called The Millionaire Real Estate Investor.
Yep.
And he decided that he wanted to, learn about investing. So we did a flip. So Jay, my husband, and I, and a couple other folks decided to flip a house. It was unmitigated disaster. We made no money. I put in most of the sweat equity because I was
Yeah.
basically not working outside of the home at the time. And I think between the four of us, we each made like $500, with no one getting paid for their work. And yet it kind of lit a fire in me. So we ended up buying several more investment properties. And I
Okay.
was a real estate investor before I got into real estate. So I did that for about probably 3 or 4, 5 years, just kind of buying properties,
Yeah.
remodeling them, and then keeping them.
Okay.
And it's been such a blessing for our family for me to take on that landlady role. And now we have 19 doors now.
Wow.
Yeah, which is
Congratulations. It's
it's
been
hard to believe, but it was sort of just over time, every 2 years, and then all of a sudden you look up and you have a little empire.
yeah.
And so then in 2009, when my oldest son decided, well, no, he didn't decide to go to kindergarten, but he went to kindergarten. I got my real estate license really to save money on investment properties. That was my whole reasoning behind it. And my goal was to make $15,000, which was a lot of people start real estate as a
Yeah.
little side hustle.
Yeah.
And I ended up making $85,000 my first year in real estate, which was twice as much as I'd ever made in any other job
Wow.
before. And that's about $239,000 in today's Austin dollars.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I was like, wow, I might be good at this. So yeah, the rest is history. We actually are celebrating our 25th hundred family served. Yeah, this week actually.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank
Nice
you.
timing on
Feels
that.
like a real impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2,500 families. So
So good timing on this interview then.
yeah, yeah, I think it actually is. I want to say it's maybe next week sometime.
Okay.
It's the 25th hundred closing. So
So what do you think it was about that experience with that first property where some people would probably say, you know what, this was a colossal mistake. What were we thinking, or what was I thinking? And just go back to like regular 9 to 5 or trying something else. And so what clicked in you though? Because it sounded like you got the bug.
yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think that I've always had the mindset of you fail your way to success. And so for me, a failure looks more like a learning experience,
Yeah.
learning opportunity. And to be honest, we haven't done a lot of flips since then. It was more like buy and hold. And I go back and I wish we'd kept that one. We bought that house for about $50,000, and I know it's probably worth, $450,000 now. I wish I'd held on to it. And we just got great guidance. We're blessed to have been in Gary Keller's orbit. He's a self-made billionaire, and I got all of that like trickled down from Jay. Jay would come home from work and kind of share his wisdom from Gary. And, we just, at one point we decided that we were going to set a goal to become millionaires.
Okay.
And that was pretty early on in our marriage. And so we started tracking our net worth. And at the time, our net worth was about $2,000.
Yeah.
And so that real estate seemed like a way that we could get there.
Yeah.
That was always our goal, was not necessarily the income, it was the net worth.
Yeah.
And we thought if we could get there in 10 years and have 10 rental properties, we would have $75,000 in passive income. And then we could be financially free.
Sure.
We always kind of called it our FU money, so
Yeah.
that we could say FU to our jobs. And at the time when we set that goal, we didn't have children. So
Hmm.
$75,000 was definitely doable
Sure.
as far as living expenses go. And
Sure.
yeah, so we ended up hitting that goal in 6.5 years, became net worth millionaires,
Great.
and have greatly exceeded that
Yeah.
since been, through luck, hard work, and just, Keller Williams has been a big
Yeah.
blessing to us in terms of my mindset, just helping me understand what is actually possible over time.
Congratulations on that. That's
Yeah,
really, really
thank
impressive
you.
and
Thank you.
inspiring. And I
Thank
think a
you.
lot of people are at that point as well, wondering, when you see it, when you map it out and you're intentional about what you want the outcome to be, then everything that you do on a day-to-day basis, if it's not meeting that goal, then
Mhm.
you got to get rid of it or
Yeah.
to stay focused. So I'm sure a lot of that happened as well.
Yeah. I mean, success looks different than people think it is.
Yeah.
Success is repeatable activities done over time.
Yeah.
And so we can look back at the last 20 years, and there are definitely some habits that we put into place that
Yeah.
helped us become really successful. And that's not always that exciting to think about that. And everything compounds. It's amazing how wealth compounds, how
Yeah.
working out compounds,
Yeah.
how investing in yourself compounds. And,
Mm.
we've just done some of those things. And if you had told me 25 years ago, that I would be on a podcast talking about this, I probably would have laughed at you. So,
What are some of those habits that come to mind? We don't have to go through the full list, but when you think of the ones that are like the ones that resonate
yeah,
the
well,
most.
definitely the net worth tracking.
Hmm.
So I think a lot of people are really focused on their income, and
Yeah.
that is what we're taught, or at least I don't know what young people are being taught today, but like that's what I was taught, which is become a doctor, become a lawyer,
Yeah.
become a dentist so
Yeah.
that you can make a lot of income. And the problem with that mentality is that as your income scales, usually your expenses, your
Yeah.
kind of lifestyle grows as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pressure. And so we opted to think about wealth in a different way, which was our net worth, which is assets, you know? And if you make $250,000 a year as a doctor and you spend 251,000, you are broke, you know?
Yep.
And so we just track our net worth every month. We still do it. We actually created a club around it for our team members. We call it the Hot Millionaire Club because who doesn't want to be a hot millionaire? And that's really the main one. But some of the other ones were just really living well below our means.
Yeah.
And as my real estate scaled and grew, we stayed working because I didn't make any money for 5 years.
Yeah.
So I was a stay at home mom. And so that really, not pulling yourself out of the workforce for 5 years is a lot for
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
It affected my career a lot. And of course, I'm happy that I was able to do it. But really living on my husband's income as I grew my real estate, so then I could invest back in the team, grow the team, and then we could buy investments with the extra money. So definitely like living below our means was huge for us. And, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what you make. It matters how much you spend. I think about that old story of that, I think it was a janitor, Ronald Reed. I don't know if you're familiar with that. He was a janitor and he worked at a gas station,
Yeah.
just a regular guy. And when he died, he donated 8 million. He had $8 million,
Wow.
and 6 million went to charity and $2 million went to his family.
Wow.
Everyone was shocked. And they asked his family, did he win the lottery? Did he do this? But he really didn't. He just lived well below his means and
Yeah.
he invested the rest and he let that compounding do the heavy lifting over time. And
Wow.
anyone can do that.
Yeah. That's very inspiring. What's been the upside of building an empire with Jay?
The upside. Well, we have a lot to talk about
Yeah.
all the time. So our date
Yeah.
nights are never boring. And I would say that has been one of our habits too, is a weekly date night. We have a date every Wednesday, and we've done that for since our kids were toddlers. We've been on probably close to 1,000 dates with each other.
That's
Yeah,
beautiful. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. The upside has been it's been amazing. We've grown a lot. I've
Yeah.
personally grown a lot aside from being a parent. It's been the biggest growth experience of my life, maybe even more so. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so we give a lot of money away. We have a huge giving goal every year. We've raised probably over $3 million for local
Wow.
charities just by
Wow.
doing events and sort of doing that. And that's been a real true blessing. And then we've just been in business with amazing people along
Yeah.
the way. And that network and the ability as a leader to lift others with you as you climb is a great gift.
Yeah.
It's been a really great gift for us. Yeah.
Was there ever a challenge about or struggle with trying to protect the relationship from the business?
Well, the good thing is we don't actually work together.
Okay.
So he's at the corporate office.
Okay.
He's got his W-2 job
Yeah.
that he leaves the house for and goes to every day. And I kind of handle the real estate stuff.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of overlap, but we don't work together. I would love to work together with him. I think he's a little nervous of it, probably
Yeah.
rightly
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're busy. We're both busy a lot, and there have definitely been times where there's nothing extra, to give, and we need something. We never did this, but I listened to Brene Brown talk about how she and her husband have like a number system for their family,
Okay.
which is they can just be like, listen, I'm at a 2 today. I'm like
Yeah.
at a 2 out of 10. And
Yeah.
I need to like lean into you today. And especially when you have younger kids or when your kids are in middle school and you're like chief Uber officer, driving your kids around. And then when they're teenagers, it can be really difficult. And we always prioritize our marriage, though. I would tell our kids, listen, I love you, but you guys are random. I picked your dad, you know,
That's funny.
which hopefully didn't mess them up too much. But they have always known that we're first,
Oh,
our
that's great.
marriage. Not that we wouldn't pull our kids out of a burning building first, but you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like they know that our marriage is the priority and we've always prioritized it.
that's great.
And that's been super important. And we do that in several ways. We have our weekly date night. We do an annual getaway goal setting session for couples, which has been very powerful for us and helped keep us on the same page. So we'll actually leave the city. And even when our kids were young, especially when our kids were young, you need that to just have a way to focus on what's important. And then you get the opportunity to share your goals and build something together long term. And so, yeah, I feel really lucky. I
Yeah.
mean, I certainly wasn't a marriage expert when Jay asked me to marry him, and I feel really lucky that it worked out because I
Yeah.
know some people are unlucky. You
Yeah.
think getting into a relationship with someone and they're a different person than you
Of
think.
course. Or
Yeah,
people just evolve over time or they change
of
and some
course.
people
Yeah,
grow and some people don't and yeah,
absolutely.
you
Yeah,
grow
some
apart.
people are, and so I feel like we're lucky that
Yeah.
we have a lot of, and I think you do when you're in a marriage, you can fall out of love
Yeah.
with that other person, especially with life going on. Our kids are 15 months apart.
Yeah.
So when they were little, it was really hard. And I've always respected him and he's always respected me. And
That's great.
that's carried us through the more challenging times.
Yeah. What was the impact of the book when it became popular? Did things change or
Oh, the one
was it,
thing?
yeah, the
Yeah.
one thing? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, first of all, that we've been living that book for
Yeah.
many years
Yeah.
because it took them about, several years to do the research around it. And I would say it affected us personally more than professionally, if that
Okay.
makes sense. And just because the book is so good. So just for your listeners, it's called The One Thing. Jay's written many books. That one's definitely sold the most. It's, I think, 3.5 million copies now.
Wow.
The best-selling business books of all time. And for me, I was like a variety is the spice of life kind of person. Like I want to do this, I want to do that. And so that really helped me understand. And I think this is so important for a lot of entrepreneurs that it's kind of like I said, success looks different than you think it does.
Mm.
Focus on one thing
Yeah.
and that compounds over time
Yeah.
versus a lot of entrepreneurs like the shiny new thing. And I'm certainly guilty of this where
Same.
maybe this is fun. And then you go
Yeah.
over here and that's fun. And so when I'm feeling really scattered, I'll actually just open that book to any chapter and read a chapter and be like, oh, yeah, I just needed that. So,
That's
yeah.
good advice. I read the book years ago and I've moved so many times. I don't know if I still have the physical copy, but
Oh, well, I'll send you.
yeah, it's just important. I think just that, even just seeing it on the shelf, it would probably be helpful. Just be like, oh yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Wendy
Yeah.
said
What's
one
your one
thing.
thing? Yeah, we do that as a team.
Yeah.
So we get on a quick huddle every morning and everybody goes around and they
Mm,
say what their one thing for
I
the
love
day
that.
is. And that
Yeah.
just allows you to have like that micro focused because I know for me, sometimes at the end of the day, I'm like, wow, what a busy day. And then I'm like, well, what did I do really? Like, did I actually move my business forward or
Yes.
was I just like in response mode all day?
Yeah. That's helpful. So with the visibility you have with your success, do you find like women approaching you and asking you for guidance? Do they see you as a role model, for the success you've had?
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of nice. Like I said, I didn't have a lot of role models in that way growing up or even in college or even in really in my early 20s. I just didn't realize that it was available to me in a way. And so, yeah, I have many conversations with young people, old people. I love to coach and help people. And I have a very strategic brain. So it's very easy for me to look at the pieces of someone's life and ask them powerful questions that can help them just think
Yeah.
about something that they might not think of otherwise. And
Yeah.
so it's just a gift that I have. And I'm brave enough to say things that can be hard for other people to say. So I have people come up to me all the time who've said, "Oh my gosh, I ran into you in the hallway at our real estate office 7 years ago, and you asked me this question outside the bathroom, and it changed my life."
Wow.
And I'm thinking like, I have no idea. I
Yeah.
don't remember that conversation at
Sure,
all, but
sure.
that's kind of, I think that's one of my superpowers. So yeah, if I can help somebody, I will.
Where'd you cultivate that bravery?
I don't know. I've always been kind of brave. I think it really started, I got my love, my desire to travel from my dad. We used to take these long road trips to visit my grandparents in California.
Okay.
And then my dad would take our family on these just little drives around to weird places in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And so he kind of cultivated this curiosity in me about other places and exploring. And
Mm.
I always wanted to study abroad,
Okay.
but I just couldn't afford it. So I
Yeah.
paid my way through school. And I just knew that that was never like really in the cards for me.
Yeah.
Sometimes I couldn't even afford to go home for holidays and things like
Oh.
that. And so then I always said, okay, well, if I can't do that, then I'm going to go travel after I graduate. And so I got my little visa to work in the UK. I'd never been overseas.
Yeah.
And I was so scared, Harry. I literally got to my hostel and I just laid
Yeah.
under the covers for 24 hours. I was on the top bunk. I remember it. And I just was so scared. I couldn't even, and I think now I think, gosh, London, how hard could it have been? And it was really scary to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people think being brave is the absence of fear, but being brave is really, the fear is always there. You're just doing it anyway. So, and the more hard things you do, the better you get at doing hard things. So you get to look up, and that also compounds over time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the consistent thread here. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that story. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So, moving into the podcast, have you always been a podcast listener?
Let's see. I'm trying to think of when I started listening to
Yeah.
podcasts. I mean, probably right around when we started doing that first one in
Okay.
2018, 17, 16, something like that.
Yeah.
Because as a realtor, I don't do a lot of sales anymore, but when I was in my car a lot.
Yeah.
So, and there's just something great about that versus an audiobook, you can
Mm-hmm.
listen to as you're driving across town, 30
Yeah.
minutes. Yeah. And I'm a lifelong learner. And what I love about podcasts is you can kind of pick an area that you want to get better at and then just binge on that and then move away from it if you want to,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So you mentioned you and Jay had started with Inside ATX, so that was your first taste of it. What was the story around starting empire building?
Well, I think Keller Williams had this vision, and I think honestly it came from Jay.
Okay.
The Inside ATX podcast also came from Jay. He's a content creator.
Yeah.
That's definitely his gift in the world, and he's a phenomenal writer, author, and he has a really popular podcast called The One Thing, which has been, I don't even know when that started, but there are millions and millions of downloads.
Yeah.
So he kind of suggested it to Keller Williams, and then we were going to launch it in February of 2020.
Yeah.
There's four of us. And so there was we were on stage and they were talking about it. And then, of course, and the idea was, this is so crazy. The idea is all four of us were going to fly to Austin, which I live in Austin.
Yeah.
Seychelles was going to come from Dallas, and one of our hosts was going to come from Seattle, and one
Okay.
was going to come from Washington, D.C., every other week. That was the goal,
Yeah.
and which kind of made sense in
Sounded like
2020.
fun at the time and
Yeah,
possible, but
yeah. And then, of course, the shutdown happened, and we recorded a few episodes in
Mhm.
February. And then we launched in June of 2020. And
Mm.
of course, we were 100% virtual.
Yeah.
And it was such a gift for me as a leader to have a space where I was with three other leaders in the trenches during COVID,
Yeah.
just to come and record the podcast. And my co-hosts are so amazing that I'm always learning and taking notes. And of course, now it's just a lot easier. But at the beginning, it's a whole, it was a whole thing and
Yeah.
trying to coordinate content and things like that. So, yeah.
So it's hard enough sometimes when you have a co-host to figure out the dynamic, but you have four co-hosts. So I'm
Yes.
curious how you landed on that format.
Yeah. Well, originally we had four, and then and then one of our co hosts decided to move on. And so we invited two other people to join us. What's nice about it is we don't all do the podcast every single week. So
Yeah.
we can split up. Generally, we have a time block to record every other week,
Okay.
and sometimes five of us can come. And if that's the case, then great. We split up. We go into two separate studios. We figure out, and then just the burden of coming up with the content
Yeah. Yeah.
is so much. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
lot. It's a heavy lift. You've been doing it for 12
Yeah.
years, so you
Yeah.
told me.
Yeah.
So it's a heavy lift. And then when you've got partners to help you out with, and then we just have fun. I
Yeah.
mean, we laugh, we have fun. So it's a time to hang out with my friends too. We do it on Fridays, and Fridays are kind of like my me day. And yeah, it's fun.
How many episodes do you have to?
Let's see. We'll be at 6 years in June. So what, six times 50, three, so
300.
270,
Yeah.
80,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
How has
Yeah.
the show evolved and from what you thought it was going to be in terms of the content and what you were producing to like now?
Well, I think the content creation is so much easier for
Mm.
us. I don't know if you would feel the same way, but it's just a lot easier for us to think about because I'm always thinking of ideas. So I have a
Mm.
little list of ideas that would
Yeah.
be good content. And then, of course, we're using Chat GPT to,
Yeah.
help flesh out some of the content. And we're always going back and tweaking it, and we're not creating scripts verbatim. It's more like bullet points and things like that. So that's just been a lot easier. And then somewhere along the line, we actually got a producer from
Yeah.
KW, and that's been a game changer for us.
For sure.
So we just have to roll in and do what we're told and
Yeah.
read the script, and it turns out okay. But it's been fun. So many people think they know you when you have a podcast
Of
because you're
course.
usually speaking very casually and you're really in someone's ear
Yeah.
and they think they know you,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that part's been can be slightly creepy sometimes, but usually great. So
Yeah, it's interesting because I go to podcast conferences, and then when I had the show, I'd occasionally find a listener, and they'd be like, "Oh, how's your dog Disco doing?" Because I'd
yeah,
mentioned him on the show or something like that,
yeah,
or like it's
yeah,
really interesting because they talk about the know, like, and trust factor in podcasting too, and it's just natural if they're listening to hundreds of episodes of you and you're in their ear. They develop this like connection with you, and I'm sure it's strange when they meet you for the first time. They're like, "I feel like I know you," and you're like, "I
yeah.
don't know you."
I have no idea who you are. Well, and you have such a distinct voice. So I'm
Yeah,
sure that there's been times when people have probably heard you
yeah, yeah.
because your voice is so
That,
distinctive.
that has happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had this one lady one time. She said, "I love listening to your show. Your voice is so soothing. Sometimes, like, I listen to it as I'm falling asleep, and I'm just like, I don't know what your husband thinks about that,
Yeah.
but thank you for that. But that's
Harry Duran podcast coming to you
yeah.
live. Yeah.
The speaking of like voices, there's a guy who started a show called Sleep with Me, and the whole purpose
Mm.
of the show, he spoke very monotonously, and he would read like he
Oh,
would just read like the paper or something like that.
wow.
He'd read like this most boring copy, and people would,
Oh,
and the purpose of it was just like to put you to sleep.
yeah. I think that would work for me.
What?
It's kind of like when you're a little kid and your parents there's like a few people over and
Yes.
you're just kind of like falling asleep on the
Yeah.
floor or the couch or something.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
That
totally.
sounds soothing. I'm going to
He,
have to look into that.
it became so popular. He started doing live events where people would bring pillows and blankets and like,
What?
and he would read and he would do the podcast live, and
Wow.
inevitably some people would fall asleep.
Wow. Wow. That sounds so relaxing.
Yeah. So there's
I'm
that
totally
whole
imagining myself like
yeah,
in the studio audience and he's just reading and there's just a bunch of people
yeah,
snoozing, dozing off.
yeah.
Yeah.
So are all your episodes recorded in studio? Have you played around with live?
We've done a few live episodes.
Yeah.
So Keller Williams has two large events. One is actually coming up in Atlanta
Yeah.
next week.
Okay.
And so we will we're not recording any this year, but we've done in the past. We've done like a live audience Q&A, and that's been fun. We've solicited questions from the audience ahead of time and then sort of answered them in the audience. That's been fun. Yeah. So mainly that. And occasionally we have guests. We don't have tons of guests, but we've had some guests, which has been
Yeah.
fun. Yeah.
So if anyone hasn't heard the show, who would you say the show is for, or what's the type of content you cover?
Yeah. I think if you're any kind of entrepreneur, we have 5 female co-hosts and we have lots of men who listen too.
Yeah.
I would say our primary listeners probably women, but I have lots of men that come and
Yeah.
enjoy our perspective as well. And you're really trying to balance this sort of work life. I would call it counterbalance. I don't think you can have work life balance, but kind of counterbalance.
Yeah.
And we just talk a lot about scaling your business, how to get leads, how to get into business with good people, how to
Mm.
hire and train good people. So we do a lot of tactical sales
Yeah.
things, a lot of tactical things for leaders. We talk about leadership a lot. So yeah, a small business owner would really be who we're talking about, who's trying to kind of do
Yeah.
all the things. So
That makes sense.
yeah.
When you look back at when you started the show to present day, can you see like the trajectory of like how you've grown yourself as a host?
Yes. Well, like I said, I learned so much from my co-hosts.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always like while we're recording, I'm always taking notes, writing things down. And, one of my co-hosts, Sarah Reynolds, she's the number one Keller Williams agent in the
Mm.
world.
Oh, wow.
She has a team of 350 people and is closing, I don't even know, thousands of transactions every year.
Wow.
So she's doing things at an incredible level. So yeah, definitely learning from them. And then I think, I do listen to my podcast, which is, as you know, it's painful at first.
Sometimes, yeah.
Especially at first,
Yeah.
you're
It's
like,
important though.
but it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. To understand. And I'm always trying to get better. I do a lot of speaking
Yeah.
outside of the podcast, and I am in the middle I have a speaking coach.
Okay.
So I just met with her yesterday. And so I'm always just trying to get better and grow. And we're not Mel Robbins yet. So
That's definitely aspirational. So,
yeah.
so besides the podcast and the real estate, what other projects are you working on now?
Well, I have a couple of fun development projects. So I started my real estate career as a real estate investor, and we've bought properties over the years. And then as I grew my real estate team here in Austin, it was a distraction from the investing. And so now that I've got my team really stable and I've got multiple agents on my team, I can kind of do more of what I want. So yeah, we have a big $2 million development where we're kind of taking advantage of some new code in Austin. And then I'm going back to my roots and doing a flip in California right
Okay.
now.
Oh,
So
California.
yeah, near
Okay.
Santa Cruz with my partner, Megan Archer out there.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. We call that business Empire Sisters.
Still with the Empire theme. So
Yeah.
seems
Yeah.
like I think is it in your DNA that you just are always, feel like you need to be working on projects and just building your empire?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. I think I do like to have multiple plates
Yeah.
spinning,
Yeah.
which I think every entrepreneur really does at their heart. And I do love to start up things. And I'm
Mm.
good about hiring and training people to sort of come in and run the show,
Yeah.
so I can move on to the next exciting thing. So yeah, I don't know. I've just been blessed with bravery. You have to have a certain amount of optimism. And I've just learned about business building through Keller Williams. It's been a true gift. And we've had many mistakes. And thankfully, the wins have outnumbered the
Yeah.
failures. So we're still kicking.
But you got to put the reps in for sure.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
got to do the reps. Yeah, you got to
So
do.
a couple questions as we wrap up. What is something you've changed your mind about recently?
What is something I've changed my mind about recently? Well, this is going to sound weird, but my family has had this ongoing debate about whether or not a hot dog is a sandwich. And I've always been a firm believer that a hot dog is a sandwich, maybe just
Okay.
to be contrary.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the other night, my oldest son was home for Christmas and they kind of all ganged up on me. So I'm kind of in a hot dog is its own category right now. So
I guess I mean, if it's two pieces of bread and meat, it's a,
right?
yeah, I think it's a
Right?
sandwich.
I mean, a hamburger is a sandwich. I don't know. If you see
Yeah,
a hot dog on the menu, it's not going to be with the entrees. It's going to
it's
be
gonna
with
be in
the
the sandwich section.
sandwiches,
Yeah,
right?
I
But then
think
it
I'm with
kind
you.
of extends like, is the taco a sandwich?
Oh, okay.
Not really. Or,
Yeah,
you can, I mean, we've debated it a lot.
yeah,
So
that's a
you
fun
can
one.
debate it endlessly. But I think yeah, I just make a lot of enemies when I say that a hot dog is a sandwich. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut from now
Being
on.
being brave and contrarian there as well, I see. What is the most misunderstood thing about you?
Misunderstood thing about me. I would say I would say that I think sometimes I can come across as almost like too direct. And I think it's people who don't know me well can sometimes think I'm almost kind of mean.
Yeah.
And I'm really not, I'm really not. I am sarcastic and I think that's part of it. And yeah, I think sometimes people perceive my like efficiency and busyness as not being warm, but
Yeah.
I think people who know me, I have a deep heart and love for people, and everybody that's in my world I care very deeply about.
Hmm.
And
Yeah. Well, that came across in our time together. So the couple of days we spent together, so I can definitely, I'll be vouching for you if
yeah,
anyone asks.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much
Yeah.
for making time for this conversation. It was nice to connect with you in person. And then I just realized, that I've got the platform. So let's go deeper and figure out a little bit of your backstory and how you've experienced success with real estate and with your business and with the podcast now. And it's all incredibly inspirational. So I'm really happy that you came on to share some time with me.
Oh, well, thank you. And I think, you're so amazing about amplifying other people
Yeah.
and their voices. And I'm a really big fan of that. So I love what you're doing here with both your podcasts.
So we'll make sure all the links to everything you mentioned is going to be in the show notes. Empire Building is the show. Anywhere else you want to send folks to connect with you or learn more?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram.
Okay.
So I have a weird last name, Papasan. It's like those comfy Papasan chairs, from
Oh
the
yeah.
80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Remember that? The scoop ones.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm pretty easy to find on social at Wendy Papasan, and I'm pretty active there and love to connect with people there too.
Okay. We'll make sure all those links in the show notes. Thanks for your time,
Yeah.
and I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Harry.